sessional cross and I took it home, took it apart and tried to fix it. I realized at the end that it just wasn't going to work. It essentially died on the operating table. I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself. But we're here today for Earth Day, and what we want to talk about, is that better? Okay. So what we want to talk about, obviously, is praise and thanks for all of God's creation. And perhaps a reminder to ourselves that, as Genesis says, we are the stewards of all creation. Our own species has that obligation. And I think sometimes with that heady title, or that heady obligation, that we forget that we're really no more than any other creature. And as Pastor pointed out, we're really interdependent on all other creatures. Right? Well, let me put it this way. I think maybe the best way to illustrate this is that relationship between plants and bees. So, I don't want to get too much into the biology of it, but plants produce pollen that have to get to a different part of the plant or a different plant in order to reproduce itself. And I suppose if you try to memorize that process, you'll probably have to go into law school instead of being a biologist. But that's another story. So anyway, the pollination process is usually done fortuitously, sometimes with wind, but more often than not with bees. And again, as Pastor pointed out, in this region of the country, most of that work is done by what they call solitary bees. Bees that live in little tiny cracks and crevices all around, make their own nests and pollinate wildflowers. But the real workhorses, of course, are the honeybees. They, highly social. They really plant all our crops around the world. So, I think if no less than Einstein, probably, let me put it this way, he said, if the bee disappeared off the surface of the globe, the man would have only 4 years of life left. No more bees, no more pollination, no more plants, no more animals, no more man. So, the bees themselves are millions of years old, and I suppose there's probably some contest of which is older, the flowering plant or the bees, but be that as it may, we focus mostly on solitary bees here, as we mentioned, but the honeybees are sort of the real workhorses. And since 1945, something's really gone awry with them. In that time period, we've gone from something like 4.5 million hives to 2 million hives. And at the same time, we're growing more and more intensive crops that require more and more pollination. And it's like one of the weird things in life that in order to grow almond plants out in California, we literally have to take more than half our beehives from the southeast, move them to California, let them grow almond trees, and when the leaves die, they have to take them back immediately because there's nothing left for them to eat in California. So the condition that we're talking about, as Pastor mentioned too, is colony collapse disorder, where bees sometimes don't come back to their nests. And I mentioned 1945, which is a seminal year, and that was the post-war industrial farming era, where we went from rotating crops and cover crops that are all flowered to growing oceans of monocrops, think corn or think soy. But at the same time, to maintain those crops, we've had to use huge amounts of artificial fertilizers and pesticides and herbicides. And so, when you think about what happened to the bee, the first thing that probably comes to your mind is, pesticides and herbicides. But it's much more complicated than that. To start with, one of the problems that bees are facing is a thing called the Varroa virus. And it's a virus that started in the 1900s in Asia and has spread its way around the world, beginning in the United States, somewhere around 1985, or maybe a little later than that. And, at the same time, there are other problems that contribute to it. The Varroa virus gives them sort of like flu-like symptoms, but we've also created, through our own dysfunction of farming, sort of a food desert for bees. Right? They can go through miles and miles of fields and not finding any sort of nutrition. And at the same time, they have the virus. Right? And then they get to a plant and they find some sort of sustenance. They find into a plant, perhaps it doesn't affect them at all. Maybe they get that little tinge of an insecticide or herbicide that disorients them, and they don't make it back to the hive. So there are a lot of causes for colony collapse disorder, and it really needs to be researched more. But the question is today is what can we do? All right? And some of the solutions that we have are pretty easy. But you can grow wildflowers, right? You can let loose on your lawn a little bit. You don't need all green grass. Maybe let some clover grow on. That's always good for bees. Or you can just contribute to ELC World Hunger too. You can talk to Karen Nervy or myself about that. A $20 check is great to go overseas and buy bees for farmers to help sustain themselves economically. So, that brings back to the exceptional costs. The last thing that we can do is we can build nests for bees, things they call bee hotels, which are essentially pieces of wood with tunnels dug into them that solitary bees can, lay their eggs in, seal them up, and then the infant bees come out next season. And in order to do that project, I took what was left of our old cross and the pieces that I had to make a new cross and some other items that I had that I repurposed around the house and made these bee hotels. So I think what's cool about it is that what was once a symbol of Christ's death on the cross is now a symbol of new creation. So I have a bunch of these actually. They're downstairs. After service, we're going to go down, pick one up, and bring it home. We also have wildflowers too. So, put the bee hotel somewhere near where the seeds are. Maybe you can put them in a planter and start your own bee farm. So, anyway, happy Earth Day,